Good morning. It is September 21st, 2023. Doing the New York Times Daily Propaganda Rag. Today's yellow journalist, David Leonhardt again. We're covering a behind-the-scenes look at teenagers' use of social media, as well as Russian missile strikes, Merrick Garland, and Hassan Minhaj. So, Merrick Garland should be the primary story, but we're gonna focus on teenagers. This is good. Okay, being a teenager, London. In London, why? This is the New York Times, and we're talking about London. Okay. Oh, okay, never mind. I guess not London, England. My bad. Either way, this is a pointless story. Teenagers. All right, London, a 13-year-old girl who lives in suburban Maryland, took a more considered approach to joining social media than many teenagers do. Knowing her mom was skeptical, London put together a presentation making a case for why she should join TikTok, complete with promises such as allowing her mother to review her posts in advance. It worked. On London's 13th birthday, she joined TikTok. Since doing so, she has experienced some of the joys of social media, experiences that were not possible in a less networked world. In her living room, London streams popular dance videos onto TV, and sometimes her mother, a former dancer, and sister who has nonverbal autism, join her. TikTok also allows London to stay in closer touch with friends. Yet the downsides of social media are not far away. London is constantly confronted with images of people who somehow seem prettier, richer, more fashionable, and more popular. Sometimes she stumbles onto truly disturbing videos, like one claiming to show a woman flushing her baby down the toilet. Above all, social media takes the normal anxieties of teenage life and hypercharges them. When another girl in London's school stops replying to her messages at night, London ends up crying. When a group of girls gather to get dressed for a dance, they obsess not only over how they look, but how their before and after videos will play on TikTok. It's not as easy as it used to be, London said about being a teenager, because you can't escape social media unless you delete the apps. I think it's funny how she says it's not as easy as it used to be, as if she knows what it was like to live before she existed, which she doesn't. But she is correct. It isn't as easy as it used to be. Social media is horrible for kids. Gas and brakes. London is one of 3 teenage girls whom my colleague Jessica Bennett followed for the past year, online and offline. Jessica's piece, complete with screenshots and online videos, offers a look at teenage life today. The girls' parents gave the Times permission to do the reporting, and we have not used last names. As I read the article, I felt deep sympathy for today's teenagers. Many feel that they have no choice but to plunge into social media, and it does have advantages. Yet the disadvantages often seem larger. Small mistakes, the unavoidable mistakes of the teenage years, become humiliations that hundreds or thousands of people see. People are quicker to be nastier in writing than they would in person. Envy and jealousy, more commonly known as FOMO, are constant. Adrenaline and stress are always just a glance away. That's okay. FOMO is fear of missing out, and envy and jealousy that's not fear of missing out. Those are separate things. The adolescent brain is kind of like a car that, when it comes to the desire for social feedback, has hypersensitive gas pedal with relatively low functioning brakes, said Mitch Princeton, the chief science officer of the American Psychological Association. In recent years, executives at technology companies and some academic researchers have argued that evidence of social media's harm remains mixed. Yeah, it's just harmful. They're not entirely wrong about that. No study has demonstrated the precise effects of TikTok versus Instagram or texting versus posting. Some studies don't come to much of a conclusion at all. It's bad. That's the general conclusion, is that it's not offering a benefit, it's a disadvantage. Most studies have indeed found a link between teenage smartphone use and mental health problems. Yeah, because it's not hard to figure that out. Even more telling to my mind is the timing and logic line up. Teen mental health and the amount teens sleep began to decline between 10 and 15 years ago, just as smartphones, Facebook, and other social media were becoming ubiquitous. Nobody has offered a persuasive explanation for the decline other than the revolution in daily life caused by technology. Yeah, it's the social media. And looking at blue screens constantly. Technology surely is not the only cause of the problems. It does seem to be a leading cause. More likely, it's an exacerbating factor. Moral panics. In an article accompanying Jessica's story, my colleague Catherine Pearson makes a fascinating point. Every generation has its moral panic. Catherine writes, it was rock music in the 50s and long hair, rap music and video games in later decades, and for Gen Z teenagers today, it is undoubtedly social media. It is a good reminder that not all moral panics are justified. It is also a reminder that something is different this time. After the onset of rock, rap, long hair, and video games, teenage mental health didn't deteriorate. After the rise of smartphones and ever-present social media, it has. I recommend Jessica's nuanced reporting on London and 2 other 13-year-olds, Anna in Colorado and Addie, who lives near Lake Michigan. You can also read a list of social media tips from teenagers compiled by Sharon Adia. Among them, you don't need to reply right away. Unfollow people who make you feel bad. Put your phone down and go outside. A tip for parents: watch your own social media use. That's somewhat reasonable, but the best tip is not in there. Limit social media use to no more than 30 minutes, maybe an hour a day. There should be at least 1 hour a day where you are not looking at screens. And that, ideally, an hour before you go to sleep, no screens. Related, President Biden has promised to provide every American access to reliable high-speed internet. He still has a long way to go, which there's no reason that the government needs to do that. That is one of the most absurd things. It's a huge waste of money and just causes more inflation. More on tech. OpenAI's chatbot, ChatGPT, can now also create realistic pictures. In its antitrust trial, Google says switching to a new default search engine is simple. Our tech columnist found it wasn't. I don't know about that. I don't use Google search for anything, and it works just fine. The Defense Department will award grants to develop new semiconductors for use in AI, quantum computing, and more. The war in Ukraine. Russia struck at least 5 cities in Ukraine with missiles, damaging energy infrastructure. Rescuers are searching for survivors under rubble. The attack came hours after Volodymyr Zelensky condemned Russia at the UN. He also told the UN Security Council it was powerless, while Russia had a veto. Yeah, Zelensky is expected to meet with Biden and members of Congress today. Yeah, probably I would say the reason why they struck those 5 cities is because Ukraine is continuing to strike in Crimea, so that's just going to escalate, and Russia's going to attack as a response. So, it's interesting. Even the Times and the media is admitting that one of the latest war crimes was actually Ukraine that did it. And no mention in here that Poland is no longer going to supply them. They're going to focus on their own defense now, which is kind of telling because there's a small chance that Poland might actually invade Ukraine and take territory. Let's see. So more on the UN. Biden met with Benjamin Netanyahu for the first time since Netanyahu again became Israel's prime minister at a climate summit. The Secretary General said he would give speaking slots only to countries taking action on the issue seriously. The U.S. and China didn't qualify. We've done more for anybody, and it's just a lie. There's no issue with climate. CO2 isn't bad for the plants. It's good for the plants. That's what they breathe. Okay, in a combative hearing, House Republicans pressed Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, about investigations of Hunter Biden. Garland, who is usually soft-spoken, got angry. Because he got caught lying several times, and of course we're not going to mention that whatsoever. That's it. Two sentences about a hearing in which Garland got caught in multiple lies, saying that Weiss, for example, was not, had total control, and then he admitted that people were, could refuse to work with him, which, that's not having total control. That's setting him up to fail. The Senate confirmed General Charles O. Brown Jr. to become chairman of the Joint Chiefs, maneuvering around Senator Tuberville's blockade on military promotions, which shows that this could have always been done and it was just theater and they were always lying about it. Donald Trump's lead in the Republican primary keeps growing. 2 polls put him 47 or more points beyond his rival, Ron DeSantis. DeSantis is done. It's Vivek. Vivek is the only real competitor, and it's going to be Trump Vivek as the presidential ticket. And he's also up on Joe Biden, which they're not even mentioning that because, of course, Joe Biden is actually the most unpopular president in history. He has lower approval ratings than Trump had at the same time. And it's funny because the media was claiming that Trump, this was proof that Trump was horrible. But now when Biden has lower approval ratings, they're like, we're not even going to talk about that. All right, so let's see. Migration. The Biden administration will let Venezuelans living in the U.S. work legally for 18 months. That's not going to encourage more of them. A small Texas city declared a state of emergency after the mayor said 2,500 people arrived from Mexico in one day. The U.S. has created migration processing centers in Central and South America to stop people from traveling to the U.S.-Mexico border. Yeah, that's not done anything. And no mention of the fact that 30,000 people have crossed the border in the last couple of days, and a new border town is added every week of illegal migrants. And this is the state. Yesterday, the federal government went and took down barbed wire that Texas installed to prevent people from coming and flooding the state. And the federal government actually went and cut the barbed wire down and removed it, which is absurd. We wasted money to make it easier for illegals to cross. Azerbaijan said it had reclaimed a breakaway Armenian enclave that could create thousands of new refugees. Spain's women's soccer team agreed to play again after sexism scandals because they were fake. One road in Morocco has been essential to rescuers. Read about the dangerous effort to reach destroyed villages, which is going slowly, but at least making some progress. Federal Reserve left interest rates unchanged. It's a sign that the economy might achieve a soft landing, slowing inflation without much economic pain. Nope. The economic pain is the worst it's ever been. This is the worst economy that there's ever been. They're flat out lying. The idea that going to a store, paying $8 for butter is somehow a good thing, it's not. We are in a recession. It just doesn't seem like it because they're manipulating numbers, but this is the worst economy ever. The White House plans to recruit 20,000 young Americans to work in jobs to fight climate change, which are fake. That is absolutely an absurd thing. There's nothing that any kid can do to fight climate change. Climate change is a not even a thing. It's just a theory that they keep changing the goalposts on. This is a Hitler Youth 2.0 program is what this is. This is something that should be truly terrifying that the government is doing. Photography has aided black liberty since before the Civil War, inciting moral outrage about slavery and racism. Why is that a... Enough with handwriting. Jamie Bill writes, it's preposterous to think that Biden should have just give up political power. Right, because he's incompetent, addled. He's not in charge of the country. Other people are making decisions, and we don't know who they are. Here are columns by Thomas Edsel on political polarization. That's funny because it's the Democrats who polarize everything and force politics down everyone's throat. Nicholas Kristof on age prevention, just don't have sex with gay men. And Charles Blow on young voters. They're easy to manipulate, which is why the Democrats go after them. The Sphere, can a giant glowing orb redeem a vilified sports tycoon? Kind of makes me disappointed because I was in Vegas like 2 days before this thing opened and I didn't get a chance to see it. Frank Rubio has set the record for the longest continuous space flight by an American astronaut at 371 days. Good for him. No pen, no pad. Unlike their forebears, many of today's rappers don't write down their lyrics. I'll just... New York Giants supporters have been convinced that the head coach, Brian Daboll, not the offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka, is calling the plays. Truth and comedy. The New Yorker reported last week that comic Hassan Minhaj has fabricated some supposedly autobiographical stories he told on stage. Minhaj says they were based on, quote, emotional truth. Stand-up comedy does not need to be factual, the Times critic Jason Zinoman writes, but context matters. Minhaj's journalistic rigor and his focus on race and politics led audience to hold him to a higher standard. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be truthful with comedy, but it depends on what he's doing. I mean, if he's going out there telling a bunch of lies about like racism and stuff to get jokes and get attention, that's probably bad, but who knows? Let's see. 7, Egon Schiele Artworks. Egon Schiele, I don't know how to pronounce his name. We return to the eras of a cabaret artist murdered by the Nazis. The Writers' Union in Hollywood studios resumed negotiation with some talk executives joining the talks for the first time. Who cares? Okay, today in history, September 21st. No highlights today, I guess. Maybe it's Sandra Day O'Connor. Yeah, she's in there. Okay, so in 1792, the French National Convention voted to abolish the monarchy, and yeah, this is the thing that precedes the terror. In 1937, The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien was first published by George Allen and Unwin Limited of London. 1938, a hurricane struck parts of New York and New England, causing widespread damage and claiming some 700 lives. Yeah, remember that. 700 lives. Whenever they talk about climate change, the last time a New York hit, the hurricane hit the New York and New England area, didn't kill anybody. 1957, the legal mystery drama Perry Mason, starring Raymond Burr, premiered on CBS. In 1961, the first Boeing CH-47 Chinook military helicopter made its first hovering flight. In 1973, the Senate confirmed Henry Kissinger to be Secretary of State. One of the most corrupt people ever. In 1982, National Football League players began a 57-day strike, their first regular season walkout ever. In 1985, in North Korea and South Korea, relatives who had been separated for decades were allowed to visit each other as both countries opened their borders in an unprecedented family reunion program. In 1989, Hurricane Hugo crashed into Charleston, South Carolina. The storm was blamed for 56 deaths in the Caribbean and 29 in the United States. In 1996, President Clinton signed the Defense of Marriage Act, denying federal recognition of same-sex marriages, a day after saying the law should not be used as an excuse for discrimination, violence, or intimidation against gays and lesbians. In 2001, Congress gave $15 billion to the airline industry, which was suffering mounting economic losses since the September 11th attacks. In 2011, Josh Fatal and Shane Bohr, two Americans jailed in Iran as spies, left Tehran for the Gulf state of Oman, closing a high-profile drama that brought more than 2 years of hope and heartbreak for their families. In 2017, millions of Puerto Ricans faced the prospect of weeks or months without power in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. In 2018, President Donald Trump directly challenged by name the woman accusing his Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault, saying that if the attacks on Christine Blasey Ford had been as bad as she claimed, then she would have filed charges, which is correct. And she lied on the stand multiple times, and we found out that Kavanaugh wasn't a rapist, wasn't a gang rapist, and she was just a liar. And notice that book deal, that she got $1 million book deal advance, and she hasn't ever written the book. In 2021, Melvin Van Peebles, a playwright, musician, and movie director whose work ushered in the blaxploitation films of the 1970s, died at his New York home at 89. In 2022, Russia's Vladimir Putin ordered a mobilization of reserves for the first time in the nation since World War II, nearly 7 months after invading Ukraine. All right, that ends it.